Welcome to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. Legal issues simplified through real client stories and real-world experiences. Creating simplicity in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to another episode of the Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd.
As a business and healthcare law firm, we meet a lot of interesting people and learn their amazing stories. Brad, our clients commonly come to us with the latest word on the street that they heard from a friend. This season, we'll talk about stories with a common legal urban legend and seek to either prove or disprove the legend. This season's theme is fake or real.
That's awesome. Well, Michael, I think you're going to be really excited today. For the first time in a while, we're going to avoid movie talk and jump into music talk.
Well, just tell me you're going to stay on brand and we're going to talk about 1980s music talk.
Maybe.
Oh,
I make no promises either way.
okay.
Michael, what is the first live concert you attended?
Oh, you just pigeonholed me into a 1980s
I said
music talk. Yes. Okay. Well, my first concert was in 1981, I believe. I haven't checked it. It was the early 80s, and I went to see the Police, the Synchronicity tour.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's big time in me.
What about you?
Yeah, I had to think about this one, and I really think, which is kind of funny, I was in 8th grade or 9th grade, and I can't remember, so somewhere in the 80s, but it was the Fat Boys. So for those who don't know, it was a rap band at the UNO Lakefront Arena. Okay, Michael, what was the last live concert you attended?
Brad, this is just going to reveal the sadness of my life. So I don't go to concerts for me anymore.
Oh.
And by the way, I have a feeling this is a major setup because you're well aware of my life.
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention to your life.
Yes. So my youngest daughter, Alex, is a K-pop fanatic, and I've been to more K-pop concerts than most teenagers.
No.
And so my last one was the TXT concert, Brad. But
what's TXT? Sorry,
that's the name of a band. I've been to BTS. I've been to 17. I could keep going down the list. And
are these? And forgive me, I'm not normally the context guy. Are these all K-pop bands?
They're all K-pop bands.
So you didn't like mix a little country in there or Western or whatever else?
Not recently. I mean, I've gotten to the Stray Kids, not to be confused with the Stray Cats from the 80s.
Yes.
Of course, most people don't know who the Stray Cats or the Stray Kids are.
Sure.
But yes, Brad. Tell me what your last concert was.
Well, this one, similar to you, my son and daughter, Ellis, and I have Ellis, not Alex, and Madeline love this band called AJR. And so we went to see them live at a concert. And I will say, unlike you, I actually enjoyed the concert. It was, they did an amazing job. And I told my kids, if that was the first concert live I'd ever seen, I would have been very impressed.
Very nice. Very nice.
Well, Michael, what is your favorite concert of all time? And I'm assuming it's not the K-pops.
Oof. Well, I'll say this. I didn't say I didn't like the concerts themselves. I just was not going on the concerts I chose to go to.
Okay. Yeah.
They're actually better than you would think.
Yeah.
But doing a lot of them, no, they're not. They're not in my top. But to answer your question, no, they're not my favorite concerts.
Okay. So what's your
favorite?
favorite?
That's a hard one. I mean, Synchronicity's a candidate. U2. I saw the Joshua Tree tour. I saw Peter Gabriel in Boston. But I think if I had to just think about best experience would be in college, going to see Jerry Jeff Walker at Green Hall and I saw him in Luckenbach. And those were pretty amazing. Concerts.
Man. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm jealous right now about that last one because that's a pretty good one. I did see Joshua Tree also, which was pretty amazing concert. And if it's not one of the top ones, it's certainly up there. And then I did get to see the Rolling Stones
I did too.
And in the Superdome on their quote last tour ever, which as we're recording this, I'm sure they're about to go do another tour.
Right.
But yeah, so let's go on from there, Michael. So at any of these concerts, did you throw any objects on the stage, like a bracelet, cell phone, family members, ashes, or maybe your underwear?
My bra. I mean, is it at Seinfeld? It's a bro or man's ear. Yeah. I might have done that. I mean, I'm a fan.
Okay.
What about you?
I don't think of anything crazy like that, but probably if you haven't been paying attention, there is this new crazy trend happening at these live concerts. And for some reason, people think it's okay to throw objects at the singers. So Harry Styles was hit in the eye by an object thrown at the stage while he was performing in Vienna this year. Making the list is ever-growing crowd. We had Drake was a target of a cell phone being thrown at him while he was on stage. A fan tossed what appeared to be a contact of the ashes of their mother on stage while Pink was in concert in England. Then you had, and she actually paused and said, "Is this your mom?" And then there's and then Adele, she's right now in Las Vegas, and she basically told her audience, stop throwing things up here. So it's been kind of crazy.
Well, I don't know if you saw, this is in July. There's an artist named BB Rexa, which I've never heard of.
Okay.
I only saw her on the news, who actually got hit in the face by a cell phone, and she had to get stitches in her eye.
Oh no.
And it was all over the news because the concert had to stop down. She did report to her fans on Instagram the next day that she was all good.
No good.
But what does throwing man's ears and cell phones at the audience have to do with today's show?
Well, for those who don't know, Riley, our editor and podcast coordinator, is a huge Taylor Swift fan, or a major Swiftie sitting over across her. And first off, I pity the fool who attempts to throw something at Taylor at a live show. Riley would do some like jiu-jitsu takedown move on them. And that person probably, she's nodding her head in the hospital. Or I imagine there'd be like in slow motion, she'd be flying in the air as she took the cell phone for Taylor to make sure. And she's nodding her head. So that's what made me think about that.
Okay. Well, besides Kung Fu Riley,
yes.
Anything else while we're discussing all this?
Well, yeah. Well, second, up until recently, everyone knew you shouldn't be throwing objects at your singers that you love so much. And somehow that was lost. And something now is happening in the legal world. Earlier this season, we already addressed the question, fake or real. CPOM may affect my business structure of my med spa. But we didn't, and we spent some time discussing the utilization of MSOs and the model in CPOM states.
Well, before I'm curious, before I talk about that, I am curious, Brad, because I think I heard you asking this just with all this talk. Would you feel more famous if I threw my phone at you while we're doing this podcast? Because I'm happy to do it.
I'm good with that because I'm gonna watch Riley try to save her favorite partner here.
I'm sure she's gonna stretch real hard. Oh, just missed. Okay, sorry. I'll get back on track. You were talking about actual law stuff,
yes,
right? CPOM and
yeah.
MSO. So yeah, I mean, at a very high level. A big issue in healthcare is this law called the Corporate Practice of Medicine. We've talked about this in the other show. It basically regulates who can own a business that's practicing medicine or exercise some level of control or influence over a business that's practicing medicine. And one of the ways, most common way that this is navigated, and when you hear about private equity and other business people coming into the space, is through the MSO model, or the management services organization model. And the idea there is that you have a business that's in the business of providing turnkey management services to a properly owned and established professional entity so that you're complying with the laws on practicing medicine.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Mr. Context, as always. And what is fascinating is that, so this whole sidebar conversation really has come up with when physicians start thinking about the legal implications, thank you, Mr. Brad, of them owning their own MSO. And there's some strong opinions out there. And so for today's show, we're going to address the myth, fake or real, a physician can own an MSO.
Sounds great. And, I did catch you referring to yourself in the third person.
Yes.
But, I'm used to that by now.
Yes, that's true. And
Let's get
Brad,
started.
Brad, it's great. Michael, today, our main characters are all plastic surgeons.
Okay.
These physicians all have their own independent plastic surgery practices.
Okay. Well, so how many plastic surgeons are we talking about in our story?
6 of them this time.
6. Okay.
So several of these independent plastic surgeons actually own ASC together. And we'll call them, these doctors, there's 3 of them. We're going to call them Doctors Pink, Drake, and Adele.
Okay. Well, I think everyone sees very clearly what you did there, but you did violate a cardinal rule of our show by referring to an ASC without telling anybody what in the world you're talking about.
Are you going to you want me or you, Mr. Context?
Go ahead, Brad. Tell us.
So for context, for those that don't know, that's an ambulatory surgery center. Or sometimes people call them a 23-hour facility. It's a little bit lesser than a hospital, meaning the patient cannot stay there overnight, but they can have other surgical services performed there.
So they owned the place, the facility,
right,
where
surgery
patient.
Yeah.
Got it.
So those 3 docs, we got Pink, Drake, and Adele, doctors, excuse me.
The ASC owners. Okay,
ASC,
got it.
Yeah. So additionally, there is this Doctors Swift, Styles, and Dr. Pink again. They actually own a med spa together.
Okay. Trying to follow the bouncing balls. So we have Dr. Pink is part of the ASC and Dr. Pink's part of the med spa, but we've got a couple of new people that are on the med spa. So there's not common ownership really across these 2 entities.
That's right. You're paying attention. Good job.
Okay.
Finally, Dr. Swift, Styles, Pink, and Drake all work out of the same office, but with completely different staff and still fully independent.
Man, you're trying to follow this bouncing ball is very confusing, but I'm getting the picture. I'm getting the picture that we've got this group of doctors. They've got an ASC, they've got a med spa, and they've got their private practice or their office location.
Yep.
But in the office location, I'm saying this back because I'm just checking myself, Brad, they are separate.
You got it.
Okay.
So they all have their own separate plastic surgery practice. Correct. So, but Dr. Swift and Styles, they'd like to find a way to bring all these independent physician practices together, but at the same time, still trying to figure out ways to keep their own independent plastic surgery practice.
Yeah. And for, again, context for everybody in the plastic surgery world, the most common ownership of a plastic surgery practice they're basically like lone wolves.
Yeah.
And so you'll see single owners or very small, 2 to 3 at most owned practices. And so even a practice of 6 is really large when you look across the country. There are some that are even bigger, but I mean, we can probably name on 1 to 2 hands the practices that have, greater than 6 across the country. There's probably more than that, to be fair, but it's a relatively small number. And so, I can see them being big, but wanting to stay small because that's what their comfort zone is.
Right. Yeah. And they had talked about merging at one point, or a few of them partnering together in a medical practice. And each time they would start having these negotiations, they always fell apart. And legal implications, besides those issues, there's personalities and other growth issues that you have to deal with plastic surgeons.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, you could almost connect it to that lone wolf thing I just talked about. I mean, if you have a group of plastic surgeons, they're competing with each other. That's the mindset.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to break away from that mindset when you're all trying to go to the same pool of people to electively choose to get a surgery done. And if they don't come to that doctor and they go to the one that your partner or the person you're with next door, it can create this lone wolf mentality where you've got to protect yourself, and it's harder to align and play well as a group.
Yeah, absolutely. And additionally, the cost of running a solo practice was really starting to become too much for these practices to bear on their own. And yes, there's state and federal government rules that they had to keep up with, and that was hard for them to make sure, are they compliant? But since they didn't seem to want to join each other, they just basically seemed to be at an impasse. And a few of them actually started discussing really closing their actual practice and just, joining a hospital just so they could shed their overhead.
So, I mean, they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, if I'm hearing it right. I mean, on the one hand, they want to be alone, but on the other hand, they can't afford to be alone, but they can't figure out how to work together.
You got it. Yeah. He's paying attention. Riley, he's doing a good job today. Well, as a last minute push, Dr. Swift and Stiles reached out to us and wanted to see if they could coordinate a call with all the plastic surgeons and find another option besides the merger, for them to come together as a group or one entity. Again, I'm using their words. And so, as you can imagine, I recommended a whiteboard so we could draw out all their options.
And I'm going to, I want to talk about the whiteboard, but I'm going to clarify all this buildup. We weren't involved yet, right?
Correct.
Like you're coming in, you're about to step into all the stuff.
This all happened before they ever picked up the phone to spoke with us.
Okay, got it. So we have the context. So you're like, okay, I see a mess. Let's get on a whiteboard and we're going to just map the whole thing out. And we do that. We've talked about this on other shows where our whiteboard meetings are essentially either in person or over Zoom. We literally get in front of a